Brighton have a plethora of South American talent at the club, and today new manager Adrian DG is going to be doing a full-scale rebuild with players from the continent to create a South American and Mexican super club on the coast. Now here are the rules. Obviously I'm only allowed to buy players from South America and Mexico. I'm only allowed to scout and develop youth players from these areas as well, and I'm going to attempt to sell every single non-South American player at the club before the first season starts. Now looking through the squad, I can already tell most of the squad is going to have to be shipped out. In fact, after adding each player to the transfer list, it only leaves me with 6 South American players at the club, with half of those being youth players. Folks, we are in for a huge rebuild today. So first things first, I'm going to recall Steven Alzate from Standard Liège. At 71 rated, I feel like he can add something to the squad, and I'm also going to focus my attention on developing and improving the players I'll actually be keeping at the club as well. Although, as I'm trying to do that, the team spirit has well and truly slumped, with an onslaught of messages from those transfer listed players demanding answers. They've no clue what's going on, the fans have no clue what's going on. Let's hope Adrian DG knows what he's doing. As it stands, we've got 2 global network slots open, both of which I'm going to fill with South American scouts, although frustratingly I'm only allowed to send one of them to Argentina, so that's not a great start. We've also got 3 outstanding youth prospects in the youth academy, but as luck would have it, the 4th and the worst of the bunch is the only South American. Clearly he's nowhere near the first team level yet, so I'll leave him in here for now and see whether or not I can get a loan for him next season. There doesn't seem to be any South American youth scouts available, so we'll have to look a little closer to home for now. The network is a little bit more flexible this time around though, and it's off they go to Brazil, Argentina and Uruguay to unearth Brighton's next gem. So with a transfer budget of just 35 million, we've got some serious work to do this window, and I think it's time to get down to business. Now I'm going to try and make this rebuild as realistic as possible, following the same model that Brighton use in real life regarding transfers, focusing on younger players with a better resale value. But I'm going to start by contradicting myself immediately off the bat as we look to bring in some experience between the sticks, and at 36 years old with 133 caps for Uruguay, it doesn't get more experienced than Fernando Muslera, and at 780k and 80 rated, he's actually an upgrade on what we already have at the club. And of course this wouldn't be a proper rebuild if we didn't look for a cheeky free transfer for a certain Alexis Vega, and at just 40k a week and only 24 years of age and 79 rated, we are well and truly getting ourselves a bargain. And after 2 brilliant Brighton bargains, it is no surprise to see offers flying in for plenty of my senior players as we try and squeeze out every last penny of each negotiation. Adam Lallana has managed to secure himself another team in English football as Fulham have snapped it up for a modest fee of 2.2 million. In real life, Matoma is a potential Brighton star, but for now he'll have to reach his stardom another way as he's off to Young Boys in Switzerland for 8.2 mil. Pascal Gross and Jacob Moda both leave the club to Everton and Freiburg for a collective 24 mil, and they're quickly followed out the door by Joel Veltman, who's off to ply his trade in Italy for Fiorentina for just 10 million. With Muslera in, it's Robert Sanchez out, and he gives us our biggest transfer fee to date in this career mode with a whopping £21.8 million move to Villarreal, and Lewis Dunk will follow him out the door to Spain in a surprise move that sees him move to Atletico Bilbao for 13.2 mil. And finally, Danny Welbeck, the man who Sir Alex Ferguson thought had all the tools to become a world-class striker, sadly departs English football with his potential unfulfilled. He's off to Bochum for just 4.15 mil. And after an early mass exodus for the club, it has left us with 115 million in the bank, and that will allow us to properly get cracking on this rebuild by building from the back. And that means bringing in an understudy for the experienced Muslera, and that role falls to 22-year-old Kevin Meyer from Atletico Nacional. And a £5.3 million swoop for him with bags of potential. He fits into the Brighton recruitment mould of young talent with room to grow, and I'm hoping Muslera can provide the perfect tutor for him as the career mode progresses. It's one right back out to be replaced by another as we swap Tarek Lamptey plus 1 million for Getafe's Mauro Jr. and youngster Fabinho Sousa 5 million for Sporting Braga, and he will be the man to compete with him for that right back spot. Moving on to the central defence, and we've spent a combined 20 million on both right and left sided centre backs João Victor and Facundo Medina from RC Lens. Both 23 years old, both high potential, and both fit into Brighton's in real life recruitment strategy, and I'm hoping these two can be the 2 that I build my defence around for the foreseeable future. And speaking of high potential, we've managed to snag a FIFA regen in a swap deal for 2.9 mil, mil. He's only 16 years old, but he's already 6 foot plus and already rated 71. Give it a couple of seasons and I'm hoping we could potentially have a Mexican-shaped wall at the back of our defence. Two young Argentinians will come through the door next, the first being left-back Francisco Ortega for 7.5 mil from Velez, and as I've already got the highly rated Estupiñán at left-back, I don't need to bring in a big-name signing there. So with plenty of potential, he'll hopefully fill in as an admirable understudy as the season progresses. The next one is Anibal Moreno from Racing Club in another swap deal. This time it's 2.5 mil plus Solly March going the other way. And with Alexis McAllister and Caicedo in the centre of the park, we've already got a strong spine in midfield, but of course if either of them get injured, we do need some decent backup, and again, a young player with plenty of potential is never going to harm the squad. Now, it wouldn't be a South American rebuild without splashing the cash on Argentinian wonder kid Thiago Almada, and you guessed it, it is another swap deal. This time it's 12.3 mil and Billy Gilmore, and whilst he's only rated 76 for now, with the sheer amount of potential this kid has, I'm hoping under the right guidance, he can become an absolute superstar for us across the course of this career mode. He'll need some backup though, and potentially some mentoring along the way, and with us wanting to save enough money to bring in other attacking players, we've managed to snap up 26-year-old Mexican Carlos Rodriguez on a free. And speaking of backup, we need some backup and competition for Alexis Vega on the wings. The first being youngster Pablo Solari from River Plate for a swap deal plus 6.2 mil, and the second being Martin Lloreda from Atletico Madrid for a much larger fee of 12 million. And of course, finally, no team is complete without a striker, and with the departure of Dani Welbeck, we'll be bringing in two, the first being Brazilian Arthur Cabral from Fiorentina. I tried to offload Dennis Undav in a swap deal, but they were having none of it, so in the end it was a good job I saved some cash earlier, as he's become the most expensive signing of the rebuild so far at 16.9 mil, and it'll be another Argentinian wonder kid who goes by the name of Facundo Farias, who will be coming in to compete with him for the starting spot this season. 2.3 mil plus Adam Webster later, and he becomes the last man to join Brighton in Season 1. And with no permanent takers, it will be a loan move for Dennis Undav this season, along with a few other of my youth players too. So after selling and buying a boatload of different players, I feel like the revolving door at the club is almost broken. We've breathed new life into the team, and the squad is packed to the rafters with South American and a Mexican talent. It's a 4-2-3-1 system we'll be using this season, pushing the wide midfielders up slightly higher. It's a high line system, plenty of width, piling players into the box as we look to outscore the opposition. New signing Arthur Cabral will have the weight of the Brighton faithful on his shoulders, as he'll be the man we'll be looking to supply those goals. However, in spite of all these new signings, Alexis McAllister will be taking central stage in my midfield. Our new captain, our leader, and he's the man I'm planning to build the team around, although I still refuse to believe that the man is not Scottish. We've already signed one player from outside of Europe and two players under 20 with high potential rating, so that's two major objectives ticked off before we've even kicked a ball. And with a new look defence, getting a streak of 3 clean sheets in away matches might be a tough ask, but a mid-table finish in the Premier League and a decent run in the FA Cup to the round of 16 are definitely realistic objectives we should be looking to achieve this season. And it's Brentford who will be welcoming to the Amex Stadium for the first game of the season, and with 9 players making their debuts for the club, it is one of those debutants in Pablo Solari who introduces himself wonderfully to the Brighton faithful by ghosting past 3 Brentford players to smash home a stunning strike from outside the area to give us a 1-0 lead. And it was that man again who was only inches away from giving us a second, denied only by the outstretched arm of the Brentford goalkeeper. Solari's wonder goal though was enough to secure us 3 points in our opening game, and just what we needed to kickstart our season. The only blot on what was a brilliant league opener was an injury to our captain Alexis McAllister, subbed off midway through the game, and a sprained knee means he will miss the next 4 weeks. And as we head to transfer deadline day, we're hit with some news that Celtic have met the release clause of Caicedo. He is of course a player we cannot afford to lose at this stage, so a quick contract renewal, scrapping his release clause and a big bump in his salary fends off that interest pretty swiftly. We've had one last piece of transfer deadline day news, and that was Lisandro Trossard leaving the club, just like he has done in real life. Instead of Arsenal, it's Monaco in this rebuild, as he goes to France for 19.5 mil. And despite me accepting almost every offer that came through the door on transfer deadline day, we couldn't seem to shift anyone else out the door. And so as per the rules, that has left me with the unenviable task of releasing all the non-South American players from their contracts. But as FIFA only allows you to release 2 players per season, I decided to release the 2 highest rated outfield players just on the off chance they might be in the frame to make an appearance this season. So we're midway through the season, and as you can see, the project is not going exactly according to plan. 18th in the Premier League, a point away from safety, but with just 3 points separating us from 14th place Everton, I'm confident my youthful team can wrestle their way away from danger. Goals is where we're struggling though, and with only 23 league goals to our name, 20 of those coming from just 4 players in Cabral, Vegas, McAllister and Solari, with one of his 4 coming in the Carabao Cup. Thiago Almada hasn't quite hit the heights I expected him to this season with just 2 goals and 2 assists in all appearances, but he is young and he has gone up by 2 points, so hopefully there will be plenty more to come as this rebuild continues. We were knocked out of the Carabao Cup in the quarterfinals thanks to a 3-0 beating against Newcastle, so without that distraction, it's full steam ahead to see if we can rescue our Premier League campaign. And rescue it we did. A far better second half of the season sees us jump to 14th place in the league, 7 points clear of the relegation zone, with Brentford, Fulham, Nottingham Forest being the unlucky 3 to fall to the Championship next season. Up the top end, it's Manchester United who reclaim the title for the first time since Sir Alex Ferguson's departure, with City, Liverpool and Spurs making up the rest of the top 4. Newcastle, the team that knocked us out of the quarterfinals, ended up winning the Carabao Cup, and Chelsea beat Wolves in an exciting end to the FA Cup final to claim the trophy there, with us again getting knocked out by the eventual winners in the 5th round. It was goals that gave us the edge in the second half of the season though, and my word, what a signing Arthur Cabral has been. With the weight of the Brighton faithful on his shoulders, he stepped up and delivered 17 Premier League goals in 20 in all competitions. He's also gone up by 4 points to break the 80+ rating mark. Our Argentinian superstar and World Cup hero Alexis McAllister has also shone in his new role as captain, chipping in with 12 goals and 4 assists in all appearances, jumping up to an 81 rating. Also, Alexis Vega proving why he's such a bargain on FIFA 23. The free transfer got 10 goals and 3 assists in all competitions. But the biggest jump in overall rating was this man Pablo Solari. He's gone up by 5 to 79. He set the tone early with a wonder goal against Brentford, and while his goals and assists aren't groundbreaking this season, I'm confident there's plenty more to come from this man as the rebuild progresses. But with 69 Premier League goals conceded though, it's defence where the problems lie, and as you can see, the man who I was hoping would offer some experience between the sticks has completely fallen off a cliff. -4 down to 76 rated, and his performances were seemingly so poor that he lost his place towards the back end of the season to youngster Kevin Meyer. And with only a 5.87 rating for his Premier League performance, it probably wasn't the best start to Meyer's Brighton career either. But I'm confident he can make this step up next season to establish himself as our true number 1. A replacement for Muslera though is probably a must. And whilst Estupiñán is now officially our best player at 82, poor Premier League performances from the likes of João Victor and Facundo Medina in the centre of my defence, and the lack of true development from youngster Velasco means I'm probably going to have to go big in the summer for a new defender as well. Our scouts did do an amazing job on their jaunt to South America though, finding a whole host of talent. Much like in real life though, the large majority of Brighton's talent was poached throughout the season. Pedro Cardozo is someone I'm really excited about though. With potential up to 91, he's already got 4-star weak foot and a high attacking work rate. He'll get his promotion to the senior squad, and we'll look to get a loan for him next season. So as we kick off season 2, we've got plenty of loanees from last year returning to the club, which means we've got a lot more work to do this transfer window to trim down the squad. Before we do that though, we have a big call to make as to what we're going to do about our goalkeeper situation. As you can already see, I've transfer listed Muslera as he's only got 12 months left on his contract, and his rating is only going to decline this season. But the big question is, do I go big on a replacement goalkeeper, or do I put my faith in 23-year-old Kevin Meyer coming good this season and cementing himself as my number 1? And I've decided, whilst I am going to bring in a new goalkeeper as a longer-term replacement for Muslera, young 23-year-old Brazilian Andrew from Gil Valente, I am going to stick with Kevin Meyer and push him to my number 1 this season. He's come on leaps and bounds last season, ousted Muslera from that number 1 spot at the end of last season, and I think it's typical of Brighton in real life to put their faith in younger players, so I'm going to do the exact same thing in this rebuild. Now, with a whopping 73 million in the bank to spend, and with a loan mood secured for youngster Raul Velasco to Aston Villa for him to hopefully get some much needed first team football in the Premier League, central defence is the next major area I want to look at this summer, and I'm looking no further than Roger Ibanez. And after trying to offload Dennis Undav in a player swap again Roma weren't interested in, we've had to stump up the full 28 million for him, but for a man with European experience who will hopefully revolutionise our defence, that is a bargain. With only one Brazilian cap to his name, I'm sure he'll be hoping a move to the Premier League to go up against the best strikers in the world can propel him into becoming a permanent fixture in the Brazilian squad, and perhaps becoming the long-term replacement for Thiago Silva. We are finally able to offload Dennis Undav though, and it's Union Berlin who are the lucky team to secure his services in a £14 million deal for him, and he's followed out the door by a huge host of fringe players at the club, the majority of whom spent last season out on loan, as we look to clear the decks ahead of the start of season 2. But with a replacement sorted for our one-season wonder, Fernando Muslera will depart from Brighton. As his age caught up with him, he couldn't quite recapture the form that made him a great goalkeeper in the first place, but he will leave the Brighton faithful with some fond memories and also a 50k profit as we sell him to Torino for 830k. So with an away game against Spurs to kick off our Season 2 opener, here's how we'll be lining up. And as you can see, with our new transfer signing, there is only one change to our starting 11, with that change coming in central defence. I'm keen to keep this rebuild as realistic as possible and not to stifle the development of our young players, similar to Brighton's philosophy in real life. Kevin Meyer was already repaying my faith with him with a huge save in this opener from point blank range inside the opening 10 minutes of the game, and it was Thiago Almada who actually came closest to scoring for us in the 13th minute as he smashed a 25-yard screamer against the crossbar. But a silly mistake from Yao Victor inside 25 minutes allowed Spurs to take an early 1-0 lead, leaving Adrian DG absolutely furious on the sidelines. But it was Kevin Meyer to the rescue again as he pulled off two stunning saves before half-time, the first coming from close range against Son, the second from his South American counterpart Richarlison. It was that man Richarlison who put us to the sword again though at the start of the second half, thanks to a volley thunderbolt from a Son cross, leaving Meyer with absolutely no chance. We came close to equalising with a couple of good opportunities, but ultimately Tottenham's 2-goal cushion proved insurmountable and we ended up losing our first game of the season. And so with that result and the mass exodus of players leaving the club, I think it showed we might need to add one more player to our ranks, and having focused on a goalkeeper and centre-back, I'm keen to improve the spine of the team even further, and that's why we've gone straight in for central midfielder Manuel Ugarte from Sporting Lisbon. Adrian DG making a great first impression, being too busy to speak to him, but at 22 years of age, 80 rated with bags of potential, I think he'll slot perfectly in here at Brighton and add another touch of class to an ever-improving South American and Mexican squad. And so between then and the end of the transfer deadline day, we've managed to shift out quite a few more fringe players, plus we've managed to secure loan moves for the likes of Pedro Cardozo, Sarmiento, Velasco to Aston Villa, Enciso to Braga, Buonanotte to Fiorentina, so they can all continue their development away from the club. And what a difference one season makes, as midway through Season 2 we sit 8th in the Premier League table, fighting for a spot in Europa League next year. We've got a +3 goal difference for the first time in this career mode, showing what an impact Kevin Meyer and our two new signings have had this season. Bit of a disappointing result in the Carabao Cup, getting knocked out on pens to Southampton in round 3, but if we continue our terrific league form, we'll hopefully be on course to tick off one of the board objectives to qualify for Europa League this season. Cabral, of course, remains my top goal scorer with 14 in all competitions, Pablo Solari making the step up in the first half of the season too, chipping in with 9, and Thiago Almada has done the same, 5 goals and 5 assists in the Premier League so far this season, which I'm pretty sure is more than what he achieved for the entirety of last season. Perhaps the Wonder Kid is finally coming good. Although the second half of the season turned out not to be as good as the first, a top half finish was secured, but we ultimately dropped down to 10th, ending up 7 points off that final Europa League spot as Manchester City managed to reclaim the Premier League title once again. The board wanted us to achieve a quarter-final spot in the FA Cup, and we did just that, getting knocked out by the eventual winners Liverpool along the way. Arthur Cabral is just getting better and better in this rebuild though. He finished off the season with 26 goals, 25 of those coming in the Premier League, a fantastic return for the Brazilian, who has now worked his way up to an 86 rating and definitely becoming the star man in this team. Solari also really stepped it up this season, 15 goals and 11 assists, a brilliant return for the man who is now up to 83 rated. Alexis Vega only up by 1 to 81, but 10 goals and 10 assists, showing why he was possibly the best bargain of this rebuild so far. And despite a quieter second half to the season, Almada still finished on 8 goals and 7 assists, taking his rating up to 83. Our new star centre-back signing is up to 82, and he even managed to get on the score sheet 3 times in the league this season, the same as Manuel Ugarte, who managed to develop up to 82. 3 goals and an assist from him. I'm expecting a lot more from him in Season 3. As for Kevin Meyer, only 3 clean sheets in the league for him this season, but he has well and truly cemented himself as our #1 goalkeeper. He's boosted his rating by +3, and at 24 years of age, I'm confident there's plenty more to come from him as well. So all in all, we didn't achieve European qualification like we hoped, but with a solid top half finish, a decent cup run and players improving, Adrian DG is in really high spirits heading into Season 3. So as we head into Season 3, we are at the point now where everyone in my starting 11, with the exception of my goalkeeper, is at least 80 rated. What an improvement since the start of Season 1. And that is reflected in the board objectives, as suddenly they've jumped from a mid-table position to them wanting us to qualify for the Champions League and win the FA Cup for the first time in the club's history. A tall ask, but with a budget of over 100 million, it's one that Adrian Adrian DG has faith that we can pull off. And with Steven Alzate leaving the club on a free transfer, we're at the point in the career mode where we can start looking at upgrading the South American talent we have at the club. And we're starting at the back again. Raul Velasco didn't improve quite as much as I was hoping he would, so I've added him to the loan list once again, which means I'm on the hunt for another central defender. And Gabriel, formerly of Arsenal, now of Leicester City, is the man I've turned my attention to. And whilst 50 million is slightly more than I would have liked to have paid for him, but at 84 rated, he is an upgrade on anyone else we have at the club, and at 26 years of age, with European football experience, I'm confident he can help us achieve our dream of Champions League qualification this season. And with Seville and Napoli squabbling over Carlos Rodriguez, the man who's been playing second fiddle to Thiago Almada for the last 2 seasons, he makes his move back to his Spanish-speaking roots, joining Seville for a fee of 15.7 million. Not bad profit for a player I brought in on a free. And whilst I would love to give the opportunity to youth player Facundo Buonanotte to take his place in the fight for the CAM position, at only 72 rated, I'm not quite sure he's ready to take the step up this season in our quest for Champions League football. But at only 19 years of age, he does have time on his side. Instead, I'm going to look for someone with a little bit more experience on his side, and as he is in the final year of his contract, I've been able to snag Giovanni Lo Celso from Spurs for just 26 million. And at 82 rated, he's already 4 points higher than the departing Carlos Rodriguez, and he'll come in with that all-important Champions League experience as well. A potential mentor to his Argentinian compatriot Thiago Almada, I am very happy with our second signing of the summer. But arguably our biggest signing of the summer is the re-signing of our captain, our leader, and one of Argentina's World Cup stars, Alexis Mac Allister. He signs a new 3-year contract extension, keeping him tied to the club until the age of 29. So as the transfer window closes, we've secured loan moves for plenty of our younger players, some of whom I'm hoping can make enough improvements in their ratings that they can come back next year and feature for our squad in Season 4. Our squad is looking the best it's ever looked in this rebuild, so it's time to see where all this good work is going to take us. And so midway through the season, we're 8th in the Premier League table, which at first glance doesn't seem too great, but there's literally 3 points separating us and Chelsea in second place. What an incredibly tight first half of the season. To my surprise, Alexis Vega is actually leading the goal scoring charts for me with 12 goals in all competitions. Cabral will be frustrated that he's been relegated to second with just 8 goals to his name. In terms of goals and assists, the stats aren't actually too high for a lot of my players in the squad so far, which is slightly concerning, and we were very unfortunate to be knocked out of the Carabao Cup in the quarterfinals to Aston Villa. But with the FA Cup about to kick off and only 3 points separating us to second, there is still plenty to play for in this season. But unfortunately, it looks like Brighton will be without European football once again next season. It's slow and steady improvements from previous seasons as we've gone up 14th to 10th and now to 7th, only 6 points off Champions League qualification, which for a club of Brighton's size is pretty impressive. But as we got knocked out of the FA Cup in the 4th round by Southampton, there's still plenty of work to be done if we want to break that glass ceiling heading into next season. Annoyingly, I actually forgot to look at the goals and assist stats from last season, but looking at the starting 11 ratings from the start of Season 4, you can see the amount of growth most of my players have gone through. Arthur Cabral is still my highest rated player, now having gone up to 89, but the biggest movers though are Almada and Solari. Both have gone up to a whopping 87 each. Gabriel still remains my highest rated defender now at 85, and Ugarte has usurped Mac Allister as my best midfielder at 85 also. And I've just realised that all the players with European experience that I brought in last season are really going to come in handy this year, as despite finishing 7th, Brighton have in fact qualified for the Europa League for the first time in their history. However, the problem with increased performance is increased expectation, and it's shown with the board not only wanting me to qualify for the Champions League and win the FA Cup, but also win the Europa League in our first season in the competition. In order to take that next step though, we are going to have to start being ruthless with some of our transfer business, and it means transfer listing 2 players I brought to the club in Season 1. Neither Medina nor Sousa have developed at the rate I thought they would, and with a combined fee of almost 40 million from both Napoli and Roma for both of those players, it's about time they moved on to the next step in their careers. It's a similar story for Sarmiento though. I had such high hopes of him when I first looked at his potential, but after 3 different loans, his rating just hasn't improved to the level I thought it would, and now at 23 years of age, I'm not sure if he's ever going to be able to fight his way into my team, and with an offer of 7.5 mil, he's off to Spain. One player I am going to put my faith in this season though is 19-year-old youth academy product Pedro Cardozo. Just 19 years of age and he's already at a higher rating than Sarmiento. I'm going to retrain him to focus on being a left winger. He will have stiff competition this season fighting with Alexis Vega on the left hand side, but I'm really interested to see how he'll develop over the course of the season. Now with Medina and Sousa both leaving the club, it is time to focus yet again on the defence, and Adrian DG has identified experienced right back Gonzalo Gonzalo Montiel, the man who scored the World Cup winning penalty for his country against France in the World Cup 2022, joins his other South American compatriots at Brighton to add even more European game experience to our ranks. And at centre-back we've gone with even more experienced, as now the 28-year-old Mexican Cesar Montes joins from Villarreal. With 33 caps to his name in real life and a wealth of experience now in Spanish football, he'll fit in and provide great cover at the back for the likes of Gabriel. And so with new contracts agreed for the likes of João Victor and my star striker Artur Cabral, and with more loans secured for some of my young upcoming players, here's now how the squad is looking at the start of this season. Not much change to my starting 11, but with European football to contend with, it's vital now more than ever that we have quality, strength and depth to call upon. And as we get midway through the season, it's the usual story in the Carabao Cup as we've been knocked out of the fourth round by Arsenal on penalties. It's also the same story in the Premier League as we find ourselves in 7th place, but a frustrating 7 points off that last Champions League spot. There is some good news in Europe though, as we've smashed our Europa League group, top of the table, sailing through to the knockout rounds. Cabral returns to being our top goal scorer midway through with 16 goals in all competitions, and no surprise to see Armada now up to an 89 rating, chipping in with 12 goals and 9 assists in just 26 games. What a first half of the season that man is having. But as we fast forward to the end of the season, it's more frustrating news in the cup competitions as we've been knocked out of the FA Cup yet again in the quarter-finals, this time by West Ham, and despite our early promise in the Europa League, we've been knocked out in the first knockout round by PSV. However, it's the Premier League where things really start to get interesting, because for the first time in Brighton's history, the club have qualified for the Champions League. It's the highest points tally we've ever achieved in this career mode, 5 points clear of Manchester United in the end, and it's even more of a miracle considering we lost our opening 4 games of the Premier League campaign. It was 25 goals for Cabral, who of course finished my top goal scorer, now rated a whopping 92. Thiago Armada will take the plaudits for goal contributions though, chipping in with 23 goals and 16 assists in his best season at the club. Perhaps it was the wrong decision to keep Pedro Cardozo at the club though, as he only managed 1 appearance all season, but to my surprise it was actually Julio Cesar and Cisco who has actually taken the league by storm this season. Only at the club because no one would take him on loan, he's forced his way into the side and got more goals and assists in almost half the games than Solari, with 12 goals and 4 assists in all competitions. What a way to break through the ranks. And despite my job hanging by a thread judging by the board rating, we head into the final season 5 of this rebuild with renewed optimism that we can finally bring a trophy back to the Amex Stadium. But as we head into season 5, not only do we have the hope that we'll win a trophy, but the board are demanding it. Not just demanding to win the FA Cup, but the Premier League title as well, plus getting to the final of the Champions League. I think Adrian DG is going to be praying for a miracle this season. However, the biggest positive is he's got 199 million to pray with, the biggest budget Brighton have ever had, and the first place we're going to look is up front. Now, I brought in Facundo Farias in season 1 thinking he was going to overtake Artur Cabral and become our number 1 long-term striker, but it just hasn't panned out that way. A lack of game time and Cabral's incredible rise and his limited development with only 12 months remaining on his contract, I think it's time we look to move him on for the sake of his own career. And with German club Mainz coming in with an offer of 20.9 mil, that was too good of an offer to turn down, and it means Farias leaves Brighton and leaves the fans wondering, what if? But with him gone, it now means we've got a space to replace him with, and we are turning our attention to a current Manchester City and Argentinian wonderkid who seems to have lost his way a little bit on FIFA, now plying his trade at Napoli, and a bid of £77.2 million later, and absolutely smashing Brighton's transfer record, he becomes our biggest summer signing of season 5. At 26 years of age, 86 rated, and with an incredible stats right across the board, I think he will be one of our best signings to date. Aside from that one transfer though, I want to keep the squad exactly as it is. As you can see, whilst a lot of the players are away on international duty, almost all the players in my starting 11 are in the mid to high 80s, and everyone on the bench is at least in the 80 plus mark. I'm not really sure where else I can strengthen whilst keeping the rebuild as realistic as possible. Added to the fact that a lot of these players have been with Brighton since season 1, I want to put my faith in them and give them one last chance to finally secure a major piece of silverware for the first time in Brighton's history. However, we have a bigger problem, because with my managerial rating now at a critical level, despite me helping Brighton to Champions League qualification for the first time in their history, the board have for whatever reason had enough, and on the 13th of July 2026, before I can even play my first pre-season friendly, the board have decided I have been sacked as manager of Brighton Football Club. After 4 long years of hard work to put the club into a potentially trophy-winning position, it's snatched out from underneath me in the very last season. Adrian DG is absolutely devastated, but as we fast forward to the end of Season 5, we see there is some consolation that we can take, as the board's decision to sack me proves a silly one, as Brighton have their worst campaign in years, ending up in 9th place in the Premier League, 13 points off of the Champions League, knocked out of the FA Cup in the 3rd round by Huddersfield, of all teams, and despite actually getting through to the group stage in the Champions League, they were beaten 4-2 on aggregate to AC Milan to go crashing out of that competition too. The board were wrong, Adrian DG's reputation remains intact, and that brings us nicely to the end of this rebuild. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you again next time.